ClickUp has a plethora of different views available, different ways to see and different ways to work with all of the information that you have in it. It can be overwhelming and it can be a little bit confusing. So we're not going to look at everything today, but today we are thinking about some of the different views that are available within ClickUp. The aim is to show the main views, the core ones, and to try and help us make sense of all of the options available. And then future videos will look at some of the more complicated views specifically and in a lot more detail. So once all of your information is in ClickUp and once you've organized it into spaces, folders, lists, you have multiple different views and ways to view your data. That's what they're there for. There are a few other different types of view that you can have as well to bring things from outside of ClickUp into your ClickUp system. I tend to think of the different views in ClickUp in three separate categories. So you've got your core, your basic views. These are the things that you use all of the time in most of your lists. Then you have some more advanced views that are potentially very powerful. They're a little bit more involved to set up and they might have more specific uses than your core everyday lists. And then the last category, you've got what I call embeds or other views. These views enable you to bring things in that aren't your core data in ClickUp or from a list or whatever. Some of it is stuff being brought in from outside. Now there's too much available in ClickUp to look at in detail in any one video. So a brief overview of some of these different views and a few pointers on how to use them is the best we can hope for today, and future videos are going to examine some of these views in more detail. So let's dive in to these core views. The main one, the default one in fact, is the list view. You can see that here. It's a basic list of all of your tasks. And there are so many different options available. These are the different fields. You can obviously move them around, so they'll be in whatever order you want them to be. You can hide columns if you want to. You can set due dates, priorities. This is a custom field that I've created. You can resize columns. This is where you would add new columns, new fields, new properties, or if I just move myself out of the way, you can show and hide existing fields or any custom fields that you have created. So let's just show that and get rid of that. And you can see the status column now comes in. You've got various different sorting and grouping options. So you can sort by whatever you want to. And if you click this button, you can change the order with which it sorts in. At the moment, they're grouped by status, but if, for example, I wanted to group them by a custom field of time sector, you can do that, and then instead they get grouped differently. And then you have various different filtering options that you can put in as well, based on all of these different properties. So let's say I wanted to filter it for anything that was due within the next 7 days. That just brings in these two tasks that are due within the next 7 days. You have loads of options in your basic list view. Then you have the board view. The board view is great for content creation or anything where you need to move things through different steps or stages. We're just going to change the statuses on this list for the board view. And let's just go for a basic Kanban view. It'll bring in a few statuses, apply changes. So we've now changed the statuses that are available in this view, and we're going to create a board view. So here we now have a board view. ClickUp have actually just redesigned their board view. This is Boards 3.0. I love it. It's brilliant. As you can see, it's a card-based view. What you can actually do is you can collapse the columns individually if you want to, and you can then expand them. You can obviously move the different cards from one status to the next. One thing I do like is you can group and sort things in exactly the same way that you would in a list view. Let's just do something else first. There are certain things you can do. You can show different properties. Let's show the due date. Let's show the time sector. So this just shows the due date and the time sector. So if I now wanted to sort that, you can sort it by any of these different things. So we'll sort it by due date. So that brings the ones that are due soon right up to the top. You can filter it. Let's just add that same filter before is within the next 7 days. That will remove everything apart from the 2 tasks that are due soon. We're going to get rid of that filter though for now. You can also do something called swim lanes. In the grouping system, you can choose what you group it by, and you can then enable swim lanes. And for the purposes of this, let's create swim lanes for the time sector. So everything is still grouped by its status, but then you also have swim lanes for the different time sectors. So it's grouped in 2 different ways. The last thing I want to show you is that you can actually make the cards look a little bit more impressive. So if we go into this particular task, if we attach an image file to it, let's just go for this one because it's there. That will attach an image file to it. If I close that, then in the board view, you can choose the cover of the task to set an image. And so you can have images as the covers for your different tasks in the board. It makes the cards a little bit bigger, but it also makes them stand out a little bit more. One thing I will just point out, for some reason, if you add a cover, that does not show up as the cover of the card. I think that's something they need to change. It has to be an attached image. The table view is next up. This is really good for showing a lot of information in less space. It's more like a spreadsheet, really. So it's best for showing information, but it's not great for things like completing tasks. Very quickly, we'll create a table view, which is another core view. As you can see, this is like a spreadsheet. And we'll just add a few fields in. Status, due date, and let's add in time sector as well. So you can see all of the same basic stuff. You've got all of the same sorting options, filtering options, and grouping options. You also have Gantt and timeline views, so a Gantt view and a timeline view. We'll just create a Gantt view for now. I'm not going to show you a whole lot on this. Just note that what you do on your Gantt view or your timeline view is going to impact the start and end date of your task. So if I stretched this out, as you can do, and then clicked on it, you'll see that my dates have now changed. You can do all of the normal grouping and filtering as you can with the other views in a Gantt view. The calendar view, that's actually one I'm starting to use a little bit more. This shows your tasks, items, whatever in a calendar view, and you've got a day option, a 4-day option, a week option, or a month view. The calendar view is created here. If you sync ClickUp with Google Calendar or others, then these views can also show your calendar events from Google Calendar. So you'll see here, you click this, it expands it, and here are my calendars. So I'm just going to bring in this one, so you'll see it. I'm going to change it to a week view. It does make all of your calendar events purple. You can't show your calendar events based on different colors, but for now I'm going to get rid of that. Now you can show list items here according to any date field you have on your tasks, whether that's the due date or any custom date field that you've created. You see, none of these are ordered by time, but if, for example, I wanted to, I could just drag this into a time slot. Again, this is going to impact the start and due dates and times on your task. You can show different fields on these cards. So, for example, let's show the time sector. This is great for things like time blocking, but also for scheduling and planning when you're going to do content. If you want to plan your publishing schedule, for example, dragging the different items of content onto a calendar view is really helpful. There are some more advanced views as well. We're just going to mention a few of those very briefly right now. You see, some of these warrant separate videos in their own right. You can create form views for your information. Now, this is a great way of getting data and information into your lists within ClickUp. They don't actually show you anything that's there, but you can enter data through the form. An example, I would have used this in a previous job. I was managing a church building and people would report breakages, faults, things that weren't working to me, and repairs that were needed within the building. A ClickUp form would be brilliant for that because I could share it with my team and they could report all of these things and they would go straight into ClickUp. The same basic idea would work for bug reports, tickets, that kind of thing. Send somebody a form and it will automatically bring the data into your lists when they fill it out. You also have a mind map view available within ClickUp. This is great for visual thinkers to brainstorm, to plan, to organize your data visually in a mind map. So for the embedded views and the other views, there are actually two kinds you can have. There's ClickUp-based views. That would include embedding a doc within your list area. That would include a whiteboard view, so for brainstorming, visual planning, creating visual guides or flowcharts for your work, that kind of thing. You can also bring in a chat view, creating a specific chat channel for that particular list for your team. But then you also have external embedded views, so you can bring in a Google Sheet, a Google Doc, a calendar, YouTube videos, a map if you want, and you can actually embed any website that you want to that is embeddable. These are great for bringing other things into your ClickUp sort of list area. Now, when it comes to all of the different kinds of ways of using these views, some of the general settings that you have, there's loads that I could say about how to make the most of them. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give you 3 key points. These are, I think, the most important things that I could say for you to take away right now. Number 1, you can create multiple views of the same type within a list. So you could have multiple list views or 4 or 5 board views. And each of those can have different settings, different groupings, different filters, different sorting, all of that kind of stuff. You can do that, and you should, but name them well. That's the point. You need to name them in such a way that when you come back to it later, you know what the view is actually going to show you. Secondly, pin the views that you want to access the most frequently. And favourite any views that you need to access all of the time so they show up in your list of favourites. And then lastly, every different view that you have, you can either set it to an autosave or a manual save setting. So make careful use of that. If it's off, then you'll need to manually save it, or it will revert to the last save settings, filters, etc. when you leave the view. That's really useful if you want to change something, but you don't want it to be permanent. If it's on, then any changes you make to the view get auto-saved, meaning that the next time you come back, the new settings will be there. Now that is useful for any views you have that you need to constantly be updating all of the time. To give you an idea, here is my content creation list space within ClickUp. You can see here I've got an all content list view, which groups things by status. I've got a this week list view, which is basically the same, but it only shows things where the due date is this week. It's filtered to that. I've got a board view, which is basically everything in a board view. And then I have other filtered lists for whether it's the podcast, the newsletter, the blog, or this YouTube channel. And then I have a few more views as well. I've got a published calendar, which I actually find really useful. This is a calendar view showing when everything is published. And you can see that I've pinned these ones up here. And then this all content is actually favorited here under the name content creation. So that's just an idea for how you can use this in practice. And so there you have it, an overview of views in ClickUp. If you found this valuable, please do hit that like button down below. Please subscribe to the channel. There are more videos on ClickUp to come. Check out these videos on your screen here now for more to watch, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching.